obviously. You're back on, Tommy. You're snorting your own product. Look, man, I get it, okay? I know it's hard what happened to Holly. Don't mention Holly. Ghost, that's a mistake. And the drug game is hard, too. But you made that choice, okay? It's too late for daddy. What the man? You wanna go? Get happy now? Huh? Last time you stole me, I was 14 years old. It's scar right here. I know it. Good to see you're still 14, Tommy.
Peace. What's up, y'all? It's me, Nate Almighty, and I'm here with Raising Kanan, Season 4, theory and prediction. Now, let's talk about the fight that Ghost and Tommy had back when they were 14 years old that resulted in Tommy giving Ghost a scar on his face. Now, if you go back to Season 5 of OG Power, of course, there was conflict going on between Tommy and Ghost, where Tommy knew that Ghost wanted Tony Teresi to die, except Tommy, who was very big on family, he didn't feel like Tony Teresi earned his death or deserved to die. He didn't believe that his father was a rat, even though Ghost knew that he was, and he was holding Ghost's issues over his head, issues that would land him in prison. During this season, we know Tommy is still getting high, still grieving over the death of Holly that he caused himself. And during that fight, he headbutts Ghost. And Ghost says, "Damn, what the Tommy, right? The last time you stole off on me, we were 14 years old. I have a scar here, right?" This is the very first time we really seen like Tommy throw his hands up against Ghost as if he wanted to shake. Now, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna speculate and try to plainly predict and call way ahead of time before Power Origins how this fight is going to take place, because I do believe that these subtle little hints, these subtle little details that were mentioned in OG Power, the writers will find a way, whether it's the end of Raising Kanan or it's going to be in Power Origins where we have these characters in their new versions. They are going to show us these subtle little things. Without further ado, let's get to it. All right, now, y'all. Let's break it down like this. Now, because we don't have any more information in regards to that fight that happened between Ghost and Tommy when they were 14 years old, we have to pay attention to what we should expect of them to be dealing with around 14. And then based off of the characters that they are now, we have to try to assess who they will be when they're 14 years old, right? Because they're clearly just smaller and more naive versions of who they were when we met them in OG Power. And then we should be able to properly make an assumption of what happened during that fight, or what led to that fight that had Tommy take off on Ghost, right? And what I have here, I have three of the most likely situations, three of the most likely events that caused that fight between Ghost and Tommy. Starting with number one. Ghost betrayed Tommy in some kind of way back when they were 13, 14 years old. Now, here's the thing. Either this is how they first met, and after this fight, they began to become real brothers, or they had just got started in the game, and Ghost was not as loyal to Tommy as he should have been, but on a small scale. Because when we have OG Power and Ghost is betraying Tommy in all of these ways, you can tell that from a brother perspective, Tommy had been dealing with this by Ghost for a long time, right? So what I'm suggesting with number one is that in starting up in the game, or over a little bit of money or something, or there's an opportunity that Tommy had or something like that, Ghost took it upon himself to claim that opportunity for himself because of his high levels of ambition that he's always had, right? Because of Ghost's habit of making plans on his own, putting himself first, he often crosses people. Even if he didn't intend to screw over Tommy in a way, he did. And this would be in the early stages of their friendship, right? Their brotherhood. Mind you, I also want to tell you guys that if you're not familiar with what it's like having a brother, especially if you're, for example, from the streets of New York, you really find out who your friends are and your brothers in arms are through fighting. Through fighting. Like, if you talk to anyone that is grown and is from the inner city and they're telling you about their best friends who they say they're 30, 40 something right now, and they've been friends with these same people for 20, 30 years, they definitely fist fought more than once when they're around the same age as Ghost and Tommy were, when they had that fight that resulted in Ghost's scar, and when they entered the game. I can even speak from personal example. My best friend, who I call my brother as well, all we did was fight. But then, the same reason why Ghost told Tommy, you haven't attacked me since we were 14, and when you gave me the scar, it's the same as when you're young, just like when I was young, my very last fight with the person who was my best friend, who I call my brother, was around that same age as well. When you're young, you speak with your hands, but as you get older, once you get 14, 15, 16 years old, you begin to understand the difference between your brother and all the other people in the street. That's when it's, okay, yeah, I'll argue with him, I'll say this to him, but if anyone else who's an outsider says this to him, you know what I mean, I'll put my foot in their ass, right? You then begin to decide that I will never put my hands on this person again. This is my brother and we're too old for that, right? Even though as brothers, one day a situation may occur where briefly I might have to have another scuffle, but for the most part, you never intend to physically harm that person again, right? But that's reason number one. Reason number two, while Tommy may have took off on Ghost and gave him a scar when they were 14, is because they were getting to know each other as young men, right? And they fought before becoming real friends, right? Which is similar to number one, but minus the game being involved. So we can say they were much more naive and they just met, or they just started being around each other and they're learning each other's differences. And this is when Ghost offended Tommy, right? And Tommy took off on Ghost. I believe that when we see Power Origins, Tommy is going to be somebody who, he's not going to be as big as he was in OG Power. He's going to start off frail. He's going to start off being somewhat smaller than everyone, at least skinnier than everyone, but he's going to be somebody who always had heart. Tommy is going to be someone who, even though he knew a loss was coming, because he was the only white boy on the block for 20 blocks, he was still taking off on niggas left and right, punching people in the face, getting himself jumped, getting in the fights, constantly trying to prove himself, right? And one of the first people he tried to prove himself against could have been Ghost. Another situation that I want to talk about is, it's possible that young James St. Patrick, right, was the toughest young kid on the block. And in order to gain some respect, right, before they decided to develop a friendship, young Tommy could have said to himself, okay, I'm going to get my clout up by attempting to beat up the toughest kid on the block, right? And that's why he took off on Ghost, gave him that scar. They probably fought or whatever. And Ghost, as young as 13, 14, started to respect Tommy's gangster. And that's how everything, you know what I mean, became what it was by the time we get to OG Power. That's reason number two. And now with reason number three, of as we ask ourselves what happened for Tommy to take off on Ghost when they were 14 and give him a permanent scar, okay? Possibly, Tommy just started getting high, right? Around this time. And he got high for the first time, maybe. And during a similar conversation that Ghost was having with Tommy in season 5 of OG Power, young Ghost is talking to Tommy. He like, yo, you bugging out. You only 14. What are you doing? And this is definitely not far-fetched because 13, 14, 15 years old is that experimental phase for all preteens and young teens where you start having sex, right? You start going to high school, you having new experiences. You start experimenting with drugs and alcohol, right? This could be the same year that Ghost probably had his first drink, right? If not older. Situations where your parents are really not around for real, these are the situations where kids start drinking and doing drugs as early as 10, 11, 12 years old. So we might be in the end of Raising Kanan or the beginning of Power Origins, right? Before a time skip or whatever. And we'll see a young Tommy where he's like 12, 13, 14 years old and he already got a cigarette in his mouth or something, right? Or he already got a blunt in his mouth, right? So what I'm suggesting is he just started getting high around this time. Maybe he hit a little bit of coke, right? Maybe it's just weed, who knows? And him and Ghost got into some kind of disagreement. And that's when Tommy said, you know what? Screw you, Ghost. And he took off on Ghost and he punched Ghost in the face. They got into a fight or whatever, right? But those were the 3 most logical explanations why Tommy gave Ghost that scar when they were 14 years old. Like, shit, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Peace.
Can't teach that shit, nigga. Come on. That's God-gifted. That's touched by an angel. That's on the dome, nigga.